Here is a true tale of Rhode Island during the American War of Independence. It's the story of how a hatter, a slave, and 38 men captured a British general in the dead of night. It could be argued that this is the origin story of American military special operations. In the summer of 1777, Rhode Island was a land divided. Newport, once a bustling port of commerce and culture, lay under the heavy hand of British occupation. The Royal Navy ships filled Narragansett Bay, their masts bristling like a forest. Hessian mercenaries patrolled the streets, their rough German commands mingling with the clipped tones of British officers. The population of Newport had plummeted from over 9,000 to barely 4,000 souls. Merchants, artisans, and families fled inland to Providence and Tiverton, leaving behind shuttered warehouses and silent candle factories. The air was thick with suspicion, neighbors divided by loyalty, whispers of rebellion carried on the salt breeze. At the center of this occupation stood Major General Richard Prescott, commander of British forces on Aquidneck Island. Prescott was no stranger to war. Born in England in 1725, he had fought in the 7 Years' War, rising steadily through the ranks. He had served in Canada, attempted to retake Quebec in 1775, and had already tasted humiliation when he was forced to surrender to American forces at Montreal. Exchanged for General John Sullivan, Prescott now commanded in Rhode Island, determined to restore his reputation. Yet his arrogance and disdain for the colonists made him a hated figure. Locals whispered of his cruelty, his harsh treatment of civilians, and his imperious manner. To the patriots across the Sakonnet River, Prescott was more than a general. He was a symbol of tyranny, ripe for capture. Among those patriots was Major William Barton, a hatter from Warren, Rhode Island, turned soldier. Barton was bold, imaginative, and restless. He commanded a small militia garrison at Tiverton, stationed at what would later be called Fort Barton. Tiverton lay just across the Sakonnet River from Aquidneck Island, its rocky shores and salt marshes providing a vantage point to watch the enemy. Barton conceived a daring plan to strike at the very heart of the occupation by kidnapping General Prescott from his quarters. Barton gathered a band of 40 men, farmers, tradesmen, and soldiers hardened by skirmishes. Among them was Jack Sisson, an enslaved African-American owned by Thomas Sisson of Tiverton. Tall, muscular, and fearless, Jack volunteered for the mission. His role would prove pivotal. Alongside him were men like Cuffy, another African-American who would literally batter down Prescott's door, and Captain Samuel Phillips, Barton's trusted second-in-command. These men were not professional soldiers, but ordinary Rhode Islanders, driven by extraordinary resolve. The plan was audacious. Barton learned that Prescott lodged at the Overing House, a farmhouse in Middletown, guarded but not heavily fortified. On the night of July 10th, 1777, Barton and his men would cross the Sakonnet River in whaleboats, slip past British patrols, and seize the general from his bed. It was a mission fraught with peril. The British garrison numbered in the thousands. Discovery would mean death or capture. Yet Barton believed the prize was worth the risk. The Americans longed for revenge after the humiliating capture of General Charles Lee months earlier. To exchange Prescott for Lee would be a triumph. The night was moonless, the waters of the Sakonnet black and still. Barton's men rowed silently, their oars muffled with cloth. The shoreline of Aquidneck loomed ahead, its fields and stone walls ghostly in the starlight. They landed near Middletown and crept inland, guided by Jack Sisson, through ravines and hedgerows. Every sound seemed magnified. The crunch of boots on gravel, the distant bark of a dog, the creak of a farmhouse door. At last, they reached the Overing house. Prescott slept inside, unaware of the danger. The door was locked, the guards inattentive. Barton whispered the signal. Cuffy stepped forward, his massive frame silhouetted against the night. With a single blow of his head and shoulder, he smashed the door open. The raiders surged in, muskets ready. Prescott, startled from his bed, found himself staring into the faces of armed patriots. He was seized before he could resist, bundled in his nightshirt, and hustled out into the darkness. The raiders moved swiftly, dragging their prize back to the boats. The alarm had not yet sounded. They rowed furiously across the river, hearts pounding, until Tiverton's shore welcomed them. Against all odds, they had succeeded. General Richard Prescott, commander of British forces in Rhode Island, was now a prisoner of the rebels. Prescott was taken first to Providence, then to Connecticut, where he was imprisoned in East Windsor and Enfield. His capture electrified the colonies. Songs and ballads spread through the camps, celebrating Jack Sisson's bravery and Barton's daring. Congress commended Barton, later promoting him to lieutenant colonel. The raid became a symbol of American ingenuity and courage, a reminder that even under occupation, the spirit of resistance burned bright. In time, Prescott was exchanged for General Charles Lee, restoring balance to the ranks. Yet Prescott's reputation never recovered. Superseded by Sir Robert Pigott, he faded from command, returning eventually to England, where he died in 1788. Barton, meanwhile, lived on as a local hero, though his later years were marked by poverty. Jack Sisson continued to serve, enlisting in the 1st Rhode Island Regiment, a unit composed largely of African Americans and Native Americans. He fought at the Battle of Rhode Island and at Yorktown, carrying the legacy of that daring night into the war's final victory. The capture of Prescott cannot be understood without the backdrop of Rhode Island's suffering. Newport's once thriving harbor lay silent, its commerce strangled by the Royal Navy. Families were torn apart by loyalty, some siding with the Crown, others with the rebellion. The Jewish community fled, artisans relocated, and the population dwindled. The occupation brought censorship, confiscation, and fear. Yet across the Susquehanna, in Tiverton and Bristol, the Patriots held firm. Fort Barton became a symbol of defiance, its cannon aimed across the water at the enemy. The raid on Prescott was not merely a military act. It was a cry of resistance from a people unwilling to bow. The story of Prescott's capture endures because it embodies the drama of the Revolution. Ordinary men daring the impossible. Local landscapes transformed into theaters of war, and the clash of arrogance and resolve. Prescott, the seasoned British officer, undone by a hatter and a slave in the quiet fields of Middletown. Barton, the visionary leader, proving that courage could triumph over numbers. Jack Sisson, the unsung hero, whose strength and bravery shattered the door that led to victory. In Rhode Island's memory, the raid is more than history. It is legend. The Overing House still stands, a silent witness to that night. Fort Barton remains, its earthworks overlooking the river, and in the songs and stories passed down, the capture of General Richard Prescott reminds us that freedom was won not only in great battles, but in daring acts of defiance carried out by ordinary men on extraordinary nights. The daring raid on General Prescott did more than humiliate the British. It sent shockwaves through the occupation. In Newport, officers whispered of betrayal, their confidence shaken. If a handful of farmers and tradesmen could pluck a general from his bed, what else might the rebels attempt? The raid emboldened the patriots, proving that Rhode Island was not subdued, but simmering with resistance. Prescott's capture also had strategic consequences. His exchange for General Charles Lee restored a key American commander to the field, strengthening the Continental Army at a critical moment. Meanwhile, British leadership in Rhode Island faltered. Sir Robert Pigot succeeded Prescott, but the aura of invincibility was gone. The Overing House raid became a rallying cry, inspiring whispers of larger campaigns to come. By 1778, those whispers grew into thunder. The French alliance brought fleets to Narragansett Bay, their tricolor banners snapping in the wind. American forces under General John Sullivan gathered in Tiverton, the very place Barton had launched his raid. The stage was set for the Battle of Rhode Island, a clash of armies and navies that would test the resolve of the Patriots and the strength of their new allies. But that is a story for another time. Let me end with a special thank you to my good friend Bob Ryu of our West Bay Warhounds Miniature Wargaming Club. Bob, you are the best. And thank all of you for viewing this video. Please consider liking the content and subscribing to our channel. Let us know what you think in the comments below and suggest stories you would like to see next.